Oscar Wilde has rightly said, literature always anticipates life. It does not copy it, but molds it to its purpose. A very pleasant morning to all. After an eventful odyssey through diverse vectors and dimensions of literature, we've arrived on the last destination of our voyage, literature and epidermal metaphor. To our utmost delight, we have with us Dr. Elvin Susan John, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Sophia College, Mumbai, as the captain of our ship on this last expedition. Every great movement of God can be traced to a kneeling figure. So I invite Anita Thomas to lead the prayer.
Walk with me, O Lord, I pray. Give me strength throughout the day. Take my problems big and small. Lift me when I tend to fall. Walk with me, O Lord, I pray. From me what to do and say. Let me feel you always there. Lift me when I feel despair. Walk with me, O Lord, I pray.
Thank you, Anita. Now I invite Reverend Dr. Sister Quincy Anto, Assistant Professor, Department of English, and Vice Principal of the College, to welcome the gathering.
Good morning, my dear friends. As we have come to the valedictory session of the 4-day national webinar series on translating boundaries, nation, culture, and body, I feel so proud and pleased when I look back to the previous day sessions of the webinar. So, with immense gratitude to God Almighty, let me enter into my present duty. First of all, let me welcome our dear principal, Dr. Sister Irene. Sacred Heart College, especially the Department of English, is really blessed with such an efficient academician and a far-sighted steward. The department has always received timely suggestions and strong support from our beloved principal. With so much love and respect, I extend a warm welcome to our dear sister principal. Hearty welcome, sister.
Thank you.
Next, I would like to welcome the resource person of the day, Dr. Elwin Susan John. As I went through her profile, I felt that she is not only a doctor of philosophy, but also a doctor of medicine. This is how her profile runs. Dr. Elwin Susan John completed her Master's and MPhil in English from the School of Humanities, University of Hyderabad. She was awarded PhD in 2018 by University of Hyderabad, and her doctoral research has been on the cultural intersections of skin and disease in the Indian context, and her thesis was titled Skin Cultures, Reconfiguration of the Body Through Narratives. Her research interests lie in the areas of medical humanities, Indian writings in English, cultural study of the body, travel studies, literary theory, and so on. That's why I said she is a doctor of medicine too. Today, she is going to talk to us on epidermal metaphors and literary representations within the geo-social context of India. I'm sure that the upcoming session will be innovative and informative to the audience. With so much zeal and pride, we, the Department of English, Sacred Heart College, welcome you, ma'am. Now, I would like to welcome the IQAC coordinator of the college, Ms. Shirley Jose, Associate Professor, Department of Economics. As the college is getting ready for the next accreditation, IQAC of the college is having a great deal to do. In spite of the hectic schedule, Ms. Shirley is with us. The Department of English welcomes you, ma'am, to this valedictory session.
Thank you, Sister Princey.
Next, I would like to welcome Ms. Bindu Jose, Head of the Department of English, who is the energy booster and the torch bearer of the department. I'm so elated as I welcome you, ma'am, to this valedictory session. Another important person whom I should welcome here is Ms. Sandra Juliet Jose. Being the coordinator of this 4-day national webinar series, Ms. Sandra has exerted to a full measure, and I hope she is not exhausted. Ms. Sandra, appreciating your hard work behind this webinar, the Department of English welcomes you to the valedictory session. Hearty welcome, Sandra.
Thank you, Sister.
Now, I would like to welcome all our audience. There are many research scholars, professors, academicians from far and near attending this webinar. Taking into account your cooperation, let me welcome you all to this valedictory session. I extend a warm welcome to the staff and students of Sacred Heart College, Chalakudy. Finally, I welcome the members of the organizing committee of the webinar who were there at the backstage and on the forefront. Welcome you all once again. Let me off. Thank you.
Thank you, sister. We're proud to have an assiduous leader, a woman of dauntless character, and a strong advocate of empowerment of the individuality as the kingpin of our institution. It is my privilege to welcome our beloved principal, Reverend Dr. Sister Alvin, to preside over the occasion.
Good morning, one and all. I am very happy to be here to attend the valedictory function of the 4-day national webinar series on translating boundaries, nation, culture and body, which was organized by the Department of English in association with the IQAC of Sacred Heart College, Chalakudy. I am very happy to see that in all India level and even from abroad, many are attending this webinar, and I was from the beginning itself, from all through all these 4 days, I was also overlooking this program. And I see that such an effort is taken by the coordinator, Ms. Sandra, for making this dream a successful one. You know, every challenge is an opportunity to part ways with the routine or the tradition till then. At the time of this pandemic COVID-19 situation, it is one of the best illustrations for that, and in this academic year 2021, you have loosened many of such traditions, and thereby instead of seminars, we are hearing the webinars, and it have become unceremonious or commonplace thing, and at every attempt to face the challenge is a daring step, and it demands much hard work and commitment. And the attempt of this Department of English to conduct a 4-day national webinar, and that too at the fag end of the unusual academic year, it really deserves an appreciation. And I was there with them, all through these days. And as I have said in the inaugural session, the topic translating boundaries, it is really a fascinating one. And through the discussion on translation, gender, limits of imagination, boundaries of all kinds, I think the webinar has contributed to the discourses alike of the academic and also the research community. And I personally believe that every attempt, whether it is successful or not, contribute not only to the academic but to the research community, I will surely be paid off in the long run. Hence, I extend my sincere note of appreciation of the organizing committee of this webinar. Especially, I take this opportunity to congratulate the head of the department, Ms. Bindu Miss, and the coordinator, Ms. Sandra, and all other faculty members of English department and the students for their hard work and sincere effort for making this webinar a reality. And now in this valedictory function, we have a resource person who is giving the keynote address, Dr. Elwin Susan John. In the welcome speech, Dr. Sister Princey Ando mentioned about her profile. And I understand that she is a very versatile, she is a person of a versatile personality. And she is an assistant professor of Sophia College, Mumbai. And we are proud to be here, ma'am, for you are giving the keynote address to our college. And also, I am very happy that not only our students, but many students, faculty members, research scholars, and I've seen many are attending this program. And that itself shows that this webinar has become a grand success. And I know that they have faced many obstacles for conducting this webinar, but every obstacle we come across in life, it gives us an opportunity to improve our circumstances and this lazy complaint things. And many always complain about many things without hard working. But I see that the coordinator, Ms. Sandra, and the team, they have faced many obstacles, but without any complaint. They were going on working hard for making this webinar a grand success. So once again, all my prayerful wishes and congratulating once again the Department of English and Sandra Miss. Let me conclude my words. Thank you.
Thank you, sister. Now I invite Ms. Shirley Joske, Associate Professor, Department of Economics, and IQAC Coordinator of Sacred Heart College, Chalakudy, to felicitate the virtual gathering.
Thank you, Merin. Respected Principal, Dr. Sister Irene. Speaker of the day, Dr. Elwin Susan John. Head of the Department of English, Ms. Bindu Jose. Webinar Coordinator, Ms. Sandra Juliet Jose. My colleagues in the Department of English, and dear students, and other webinar participants. I am extremely happy to be part of the valedictory meeting of the 4-day National Webinar Series on Translating Boundaries, Nation, Culture, and Body. English has always been a subject very close to my heart. For the past 3 days, and in fact today also, all of you have been getting valuable insights into the topic of this webinar. Webinars of this type will not only broaden the horizon of our knowledge, but also incite the spark of research and inquiry among students. During this webinar, all of you were fortunate enough to listen to renowned academicians who shared their perspectives and musings on the webinar topic. If I am not mistaken, today's resource person, Dr. Elwin Susan John, was a classmate of Shijo Sir, who is currently working as an assistant professor in the Department of English, Sacred Heart College, Devra. I know Shijo Sir closely, since my own husband is a retired associate professor from the Department of English, Sacred Heart College, Devra. I would like to use this occasion to appreciate the efforts taken by the Department of English to organize such a seminar especially the head of the Department of English, the energy-packed Ms. Bindu Jose, the webinar coordinator, Ms. Sandra Juliet Jose, who we know has been working tirelessly behind the scenes, my esteemed colleagues in the Department of English, and of course, the students of the department. You, my dear students, we know are the very soul of our college and the Department of English. I wish all the very best for the future endeavors of the department and thank you for inviting me to this function.
Thank you, ma'am. The much anticipated hour has dawned. I invite Dr. Elvin Susan John to journey us through literature and epidermal metaphors. The audience may post their queries in the chat box of the Google Meet or the comment section of the YouTube Live. Over to you, ma'am.
Hello, everybody. Once again, a very good morning. Am I audible? All well, right?
Yes, ma'am, you are.
Okay, great. So I'll begin by thanking Sister Irene, the principal, SH College, Chalakudy, Ms. Bindu Jose, the HOD Department of English, Ms. Shirley Phillip, the IQAC coordinator, and Ms. Sandra Juliet, the webinar coordinator, for this opportunity to have this conversation on literature and epidermal metaphors. Let me also make a slight clarification that I'm just a student of humanities who likes to read about the body and disease narratives. I will be doing this session in two parts. In the first part, I will try to give a generic view of what I mean by epidermal metaphors, the scope and expanse of this particular body of studies. And in the second part, I will try to elaborate some of my own propositions through certain select narratives. All right. So this is how I have structured my talk. Come to think of it, skin is the largest organ of the human body. And very often, at least in the Indian context, there is a tendency to infantilize the cultural study of the skin into a politics of the diversity of our skin colors, right? Now, there is a significant amount of research on this particular discourse, and they are a pertinent contribution to understand our own situatedness. Therefore, in this talk, I won't be alienating myself completely from this register in which the skin performs, but I would also like to distract you to some of the other recurring theoretical possibilities and registers in which the epidermis can be located in humanities. It would also be a very interesting position to take if we are to read this precarious position of the epidermis. By precarious, I mean to say the kind of metaphors that emerge through the epidermis, along with the proliferation of modern medicine in India, which is rooted in a diagnosis through touch, right? And that would have been a very distinct shift from the existing caste system and its associated ritual impurities in our country. So that's roughly the mediations I would like to deliberate on during this talk. The epidermis is the ambiguous surface of the human body, and it can unveil a plethora of metaphors. I will use two quotations so as to condense this conversation around the epidermis, and in a way to give a certain framework to what I would like to share during this session. The first one is by sociologist Brian S. Turner, and he comments, the body is a central feature of contemporary politics because its ambiguities, vulnerability, and plasticity have been amplified by new genetic technologies, which shows how the human body has been a potent and persistent metaphor for social and political relations throughout human history. All right. Now, I will just post these quotations here in the chat box as well, so that you all can read and probably revisit these ideas. And the second one, again, one more quotation. I'm reminded of Rahul Inamda's mural installation entitled Skin the Label, which had a postscript as follows. Skin, my sense, my defense, my shape, my color, malleable, inevitable. Does the skin cover me or does it hide me? Close your eyes, touch the wall. Where is it black and where is it white? Okay, now I'll just post that as well. You can just go back and read it just to make sense of what I am trying to say here. Now, these lines alone will give us a lot of metaphors to ponder upon. It speaks about affect. It speaks about the primacy of senses, skin as a covering, as a membrane, a surface that speaks histories and memories. These lines condense the time-worn discussions on gender, ethnicity, fashion, identity, medicine, etc., and thereby they stoutly echo the cultural scrutiny of the body's periphery, that is, the skin. Like literally, I will be speaking about the surface of the human body and its representation in humanities. The skin is a label that gives us information about the product. Here we are the product, right? And the skin labels you. The skin is a biological barcode. It is visible and palpable, unlike the inaccessible, sophisticated codes of our genomes. I suggest that the skin appears to be a very powerful medium for medicalization, commodification, demystification, and governance of the body. Skin therefore becomes a subject and an object of popular imagination through various cultural practices. So as I had mentioned in the beginning, there is a lot of work available on the question of skin and ethnicity. We have Frantz Fanon's work. We have A. Shivanandan speaking about this. You have Anthony Appaya again speaking from a post-colonial context. And we also have the British professor Paul Gilroy deliberating the question of racial skin and ethnicity. These are all names that we can go back and refer to for that particular aspect of skin, particularly again from a post-colonial and a decolonial context. Then similarly, skin and body are used as instruments for worship, spirituality, sacrifice and martyrdom in religious and folk traditions. Skin is a space that allows experimentation. Think about all the medical experiments that happen, that take place on the body, on the surface of the body and also inside of the body. The scientific experiments that happen with body as a centerpiece. Then in terms of commodification, you have an entire industry of, say, for example, the apparel industry or the clothing industry and the fashion industry, everything working along with, again, with body coming to the limelight there. Then you have beautification, all those procedures related to cosmetics, which is again an entire discourse in itself. You have body modifications in terms of tattooing, in terms of scarification, all that, again happening on the surface of the body and even inside the body. And also other specific political and religious uses of the body. So I'm giving you all these examples to give you a very brief sampling of how the body is manipulated through multiple disciplines and through different industries, right? So body can be understood as a surface on which the messages of history and culture are inscribed. Artists like Orlan uses skin as a medium to express her art forms. She utilizes extreme body modification surgeries as an artistic procedure on the surface of her body. So her skin itself is her canvas there. Now, through its associations as a covering and a membrane, the skin has become a space where multiple interconnected incidents happen and its representations are inscribed. Michael Serres, again, another wonderful philosopher you can take a look at. Michael Serres calls the skin as a place of minglings and a mingling of places. Again, how skin can be extended as an entire environment in itself, where so many things that happen on the surface of the body. So it's a place of minglings and a mingling of places, right? It becomes a surface in itself, and it is partaking in the entire business of how multiple things come together. So it is a meeting place of the body and the world. The skin negotiates its meeting in the form of a boundary line. The human body has undergone various cultural transactions and revivals, as a result of which the multiple capabilities of the body are channelized by the various faculties of the society. The most obvious reconfiguration of the body is seen through its association with medicine. The medicalized body is the most highly visible and mostly experimented form of the human body. As Arthur Frank puts it rightly, our capacity to experience the body directly or theorize it indirectly is inextricably medicalized. The body in medicine, or the medicalized body, can be classified in a number of ways owing to its capacity in becoming a site for observation and treatment. The medicalized body alone can have different forms, like you have the healthy body, you have the deceased body, you have the disabled body, you have the dead body, you have the surgical body, the patient's body, the cosmetic body, you have the deformed body, you have the burnt body, right? There's so many ways in which you can, you can explore this medicalized body alone. These classifications define the body in certain ways, and the experience of different kinds of diseases attributes different identities to the individual who is possessing that particular skin or body. And the experience of an individual with, say, for example, an STD in a society, and what his or her body will go through is different from what an individual with malaria will face. Thus, the illness experience furnishes the body with new meanings. A medical condition will get a new identity with its cultural bearings. So, as an extension to these ideas, I would like to take up the case of smallpox that ravaged the Indian subcontinent during the 19th and the 20th centuries. Now, I'm speaking about smallpox narratives, particularly because of the recurring image of the sufferer and the survivor of smallpox. And smallpox, again, you get to see the effects of smallpox on the surface of your body, on the surface of your skin, right, on your epidermis. And I'm essentially looking at how the marks left by the disease, in this case smallpox, can generate an alternative imaginary for one's identity formation. Smallpox used to be called as the speckled monster due to the speckles, spots, and marks left by this disease on the surface of the body. So as I said in the beginning, I'm trying to look at the several metaphors that emerge from the epidermis within the context of an epidemic, and I'm taking smallpox as an example here. The first metaphor that I would like to share, or I would like to talk about, is the metaphor of struggle and suffering. Although references to smallpox are attributed to ancient Indian writings due to the constantly changing nature of the viral strains, a permanent cure for the disease was not mentioned, or at least not identified in these ancient writings. And the virus appeared to be more active in dry climate than in wet temperature, and mortality rates on smallpox were not available till the beginning of the 19th century. David Arnold, again another person you can take a look at, he can be referred for his construction of a socio-medical historiography about India. And with regard to smallpox, he documents that from 1837 to 1869, around 5 to 10% of all the deaths that happened, all the deaths that occurred in Calcutta, was due to smallpox. It was called as a fatal scourge that dreaded Indians and Europeans at the same time. I'll read out a quote from a novel that you might be familiar with. It's the epilogue of G.V. Kakanadan's novel Vasuri. It was published in the year 1968. Excuse me. The epilogue goes like this. With ripe, swollen and putrid pustules, the pox has melted into the village. Her dance of death shocked the people. Taking away love and mercy from us, she alienated us from each other. She stole knowledge and left us ignorant. So this, if you haven't heard of this novel, you can always read the novel. The title of the novel is Vasuri. It narrates the intimate details of suffering by a group of people in a remote part of central Kerala. Along with the physical discomfort caused by the disease, ignorance, and stigma make the disease state even more miserable. The victims were weakened emotionally and socially as they were ostracized even from their own families and were left to die alone. As the novel progresses, we see that husbands left their wives, parents left their children, characters detached themselves from social relations, and they withdrew themselves from public interactions. The novel speaks about the fragility of human relationships and how it is tethered to the pock marks on the surface of the body. And on the other hand, we can also see the novel explore the pseudo-morality of a society in terms of religion and sexuality as well. Because ever since the villagers came to know about the epidemic, at least some of them wanted to seize the day and live and enjoy their lives to the fullest. We see that the speckled monster has become a category of representation in popular culture to denote monstrosity and ugliness, again related to the marks that are left by the pox on the surface of your body. Again, quoting from the same novel, one among the characters, her name is Radha, she laments, "Even I could be infected with smallpox any moment. If it comes, everything is over. I will die. If not death, I will lose a leg or ears, and I will have to live like this. Even if all the body parts are intact, I will still have black spots all over the body. I will lose all my beauty. I'm disgusted and scared when I meet smallpox survivors. I will also face similar experiences. People will try to move away from me." So here we see that the suffering is not only for the survivor, but also for the bystanders, because that is how she is looking at the survivors of smallpox, and she is getting scared, or she problematizes that image in her own mind, and she says, "Okay, even I will get scared. If I'm getting scared, I'm sure people will get scared of me as well." Right? So the marks on the epidermis denoted death. It stands for what I have experienced or what I might experience in future. Now this takes me to another metaphor you find, that would be the metaphor of survival. And remember, all these metaphors are closely connected to the marks on the surface of the body, marks on the literal skin that we are looking at. Most of the affected victims died during this outbreak, and lucky few survivors were scarred for life. Pock marks were left on their skin, reminding them of an imperfect past. The marks of survival can be explained as a successor of the marks of struggle and suffering, quite literally. The visible scars were trophies of their survival. As per the number of reported cases in Kerala, the highest number of smallpox deaths happened during the 1950s and 1960s. Survival was closely connected to smallpox deities in different parts of the world. And from India, the deity of Sitala is mostly studied and documented by anthropologists and historians around the world. In the northern temples of India, she is represented as a calm goddess. She is riding a donkey while carrying a water, broom, and a basket of grain. And the grains are supposed to, they symbolize the pox pustules, and the broom signifies, her power to sweep away the pox if she pleases to do. So her name Sitala meant the cool one, right? The cool one, adding on to the burden of the people to keep her cool all the time and not to be punished by her wrath. So as we all know, gods can always, punish us. So again, referring back to the novel Vasuri, there's a character called Luko in Kakanadan's novel Vasuri. He laments that he has not hurt anyone in his entire life, and even then God has punished his family with the pox. So the reference back to how gods are punishing, with diseases. Kakanadan narrates the story of the powerful Mother Mary of Parepalli, who has saved an entire market from smallpox in the past. Elkuti in the same novel is scared that God will punish her with the pox as she tried to seduce her son-in-law. Then we find several references to how different deities, maybe gods, are related to the myth of smallpox. Then in O.V. Vijayan's The Legends of Khazak, there is a passive mentioning of Mariamma as the goddess of smallpox who was worshipped by the lower caste with toddy in order to escape from her wrath and curse. So one way or the other, you either pacify your deity or make her cool in terms of the Sitala deity in order to find your way out of her wrath and curse. Then another popular goddess mentioned in the myths of Kerala, Bhadra Kali, is often depicted with mild pock marks on her face as she was cursed by Vasurimala. And again, these are all other mythical references to smallpox that we find in our cultural imaginary. Associated with the story of Vasurimala and Bhadra Kali, you have Theyyam. Theyyam is this popular ritualistic performance in Kerala, which is associated with this deity Bhadra Kali, and it is performed. It is portrayed as a performance by a lower caste body, and there is a very interesting paradox that you find here, because the worship of the gods of disease is one among the many practices that you associate with Theyyam within the Theyyam cult. And the invocation and dance are presented in front of the village shrine, and in most cases, Theyyam itself is considered as the divine presence. So people pray to Theyyam as the artist metamorphoses into the deity of the shrine during the performance. And although it is performed by a lower caste body, when the Theyyam artist is touching the upper caste, it's perfectly fine because it's considered as the gods touching the lower caste body. And I'm sure you all watched this movie as well, the Malayalam movie Kaliyattam. It's an adaptation of Shakespeare's Othello. Othello is portrayed as a Theyyam artist who falls in love with the daughter of the village head, and Othello is speckled with pock marks all over his face, probably to denote him as a pox survivor, adding on to the powers of a lower caste body as a reincarnation of God. So the marks of survival thus created a new identity and a new community. The attack of smallpox shook the existing community as it took lives from people without any biases of caste, creed, or class. The survivors had marks on their skin which separated them from the uninfected. The identity of smallpox defines it as an epidemic, thus affecting communities together. If it comes, it returns with many deaths in its hands, as one of Kakanadan's character reminds us in Vasuri. So the new community is defined on the basis of a fear of death, as they might share a common fear of surviving a painful disease in the past as well. Now, there is another metaphor that comes through the marks on the epidermis, and that would be the metaphor of precaution. Because the marks of survival, it inevitably remind us about the different precautionary practices adopted by the state. The introduction of vaccination has a very interesting history in this country, because initially vaccination was only meant for the Europeans, and later on it was expanded to the immediate native communities around them, as it was advocated as a precautionary measure among the natives by the colonizers. It was called as the marks from the West. It had to overthrow the resistance from the native practice of inoculation, because we already had a different way of inoculating ourselves, and at the same time resistance from native practitioners in order to establish state roots in India. So this resulted in a fight between the agencies of native marking and marking from the West, or marking by the Europeans. The native practice of inoculation was called as variolation in India, where material from the pustules of a smallpox patient were introduced into a healthy body. Now, there are detailed accounts of all this, of how this was conducted and how, variolation, the medical practice of variolation, how it is different from the medical practice of vaccination. Obviously, I'm not trained to give you details about that, but if you do your research, when you look upon it, you will find those materials online and in books. But I'm more concerned about the cultural aspect of how variolation was different from vaccination, why and why vaccination faced a lot of resistance from the native marking and native practice called as variolation. So variolation was preferred over vaccination due to many reasons. One was this native practice had a very religious turn to it. So the treatment started after invoking the gods, which made the people trust this method, as opposed to vaccination, which basically includes pricks. Although the number of pricks are very limited, very less, it was very difficult for people to be convinced about a method that is coming from Europe of vaccination. And then there were native variolation practitioners, and these variolation practitioners, the native ones, were called as Tikadars, Tikadars, or mark makers, who came from their own or either from nearby communities. So they knew who would be doing this particular act. They don't have to worry about a foreigner coming and pricking them. It would be from their own community or from a nearby community, neighborhood community that they are familiar with. Then another point is that it was not dependent upon state patronage and intervention, because people took the effort to get variolated, and it was not an exercise imposed by the state. Then a vaccination also meant inoculation through cowpox vaccine, which was also not welcomed in India. Then another reason was the idea of a male vaccinator touching a woman during this process was also not welcomed. It was again, created another trouble. It was again problematic in India. So these were some of the cultural images, cultural associations that we can make with the native practice of variolation as opposed to vaccination. And these are again, it's a metaphor of precaution. It's dependent on the marks that are left by these either vaccination or variolation on the surface of the epidermis. Then I think I'm coming to the last metaphor here that I would like to share. That would be the metaphor of power. Because smallpox narratives will also speak about how spatiality can be understood as a technique of power. The body or the skin doesn't exist in isolation. For example, the surface of the body has a long association with purity in the Indian context. So as in what we include as the pure body and exclude as the impure body in several cultural contexts. The narratives on smallpox emphasize the role of the colonial imperial project in creating socio-cultural systems of identification and identity formation. There are lots of materials available at the Kerala State Archives that would exemplify the statement. People can, we can again either have a conversation about it, or we can always, take it up for research. There were issues related to the setting up of smallpox hospitals and the burial of the dead bodies of smallpox patients. So as mentioned again in the beginning, here we see that the medicalized body in the form of a patient's body or the deceased body here, and we also see it in the form of a dead body. We are creating we are trying to problematize the issue of setting up of smallpox hospitals and the burial grounds. How do we bury, how do we dispose the dead bodies of smallpox patients? Noticeably, with regard to the burial of the smallpox bodies, there were two issues. Because as a precaution, people neither allowed burial grounds to be near their locality, nor did they want to burn the corpse as they dreaded the spread of the disease through air. And on the other hand, caste differences, religious differences demanded that the dead bodies must get its own special funeral rites, right? But these were oppositions, and it faced tremendous opposition because state decided that it has to be done in a certain pattern. And you obviously have questions raised by the family members. So there were lots of letter transactions. Again, you can explore all of this at the Kerala archives, where that happened between the petitioners and the Diwan of the princely state. And very often the request of the upper caste were permitted. It was a similar situation with regard to the setting up of smallpox hospitals as well. because specialized hospitals were opened in India, and it was justified by two reasons. Specialized hospitals, because until then we had our own native ways of treating patients or treating an illness. Patient is again a terminology that is coming in from modern medicine, but with the intervention of modern medicine, we are looking at the setting up of hospitals where multiple illnesses, multiple conditions were treated. And with regard to the setting up of specialized hospitals, like hospitals particularly meant for smallpox or particularly meant for, say, for example, leprosy, it was started. Number one, it because of the fear of that particular disease, and secondly, the proposition to treat the disease in appropriate ways. So for these reasons, the Indian medical scene was again revamped with new smallpox treatment hospitals. Initially, they were special sheds in the premises of the main hospital where smallpox patients were treated. But again, due to the requests made by people, especially people belonging to a certain economic class, they said such hospitals were pushed to less congested places in Kerala. And this obviously affected the socially disadvantaged groups of people as they lost the medical attention that they would have received had they been at the main hospital premises itself. So briefly speaking, there was an entire technique of power that was exercised in terms of spatiality here. Now, so this has been, an attempt to explore the ever-expanding and transgressing theoretical space of the epidermis and to identify the possible metaphors of the skin that could create a popular cultural imaginary. The marks on the surface of the body transforms into techniques of struggle, suffering, survival, power, and control. Now, in this particular session, I've just concentrated on one particular condition, and that would be the case of smallpox. Similarly, we can take up, there are data available on multiple other conditions as well. With the independence and the eradication of smallpox in 1975, we may have been relieved from the fear of this contagion, and it's a definitive metaphors of power. But an article published in the Hindu in May 2014 recalls old wounds. So it says there are of the 571 known samples of living smallpox virus are preserved by the Russian lab Vector and the Center for Disease Control Lab in Atlanta, USA. And we are highly susceptible to a possible outbreak as we are no more immune to smallpox. Due to the divided opinions from the scientific community, these vials of live samples are not destroyed till date. Many have criticized smallpox as having the potential to be the most powerful biological weapon as well. Now, the Geneva Protocol of 1925 prohibits the use of chemical and biological weapons, but there could be other unknown sources of this potential virus, as in, again, this is a report that came in Frontline, magazine Frontline sometime back, which says the corpse of a person who died of smallpox and is buried in the Arctic or a Siberian permafrost or a virus while unknowingly retained in some laboratory or samples deliberately retained by some country out of a suspicion of the motives of the Russian and US governments or out of intentions of bio-warfare, right? So it's just that, we're still susceptible to an outbreak. And due to these reasons, some scientists are of the opinion that the live samples should not be destroyed. At the same time, as our world is facing up with echoes of another world war that can break out anytime, advanced strategies of warfare will also be displayed by various countries. So a germ warfare cannot be ruled out, and the possibilities like the distribution of smallpox blankets that happened at the siege of Fort Pitt in 1763 cannot be dismissed. Thank you for listening. Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm done with the talk.
Okay. So thank you so much for the wonderful session. So we've come to the end of today's session. So the participants may now raise their questions in the chat box of the Google Meet or in the comment section of the YouTube Live now. The feedback forms are also available in both the chat boxes as well as the WhatsApp group. You may now ask your questions. The participants may now ask your questions.
If there are no questions, I believe the talk was a success, that it's crystal clear to everybody.
Well, the session was most informing and illuminating, and I'm sure that the dermatological and epidermal references in the context of literature and culture is indeed novel and unhackneyed. As mentioned by Dr. Sister Princey, Dr. Elvin Susan John has indeed blended medicine to literature and anthropology most efficiently. I take this opportunity to express the most ardent gratitude to Dr. Elvin Susan John on behalf of the Department of English and Sacred Heart College, Chalakudy.
Thank you.
So, the participants, do you have any questions? You may now post it.
I believe I have left a lot of caveats that one can take up for further research, because this is directly connected to epidermis. At least if we are speaking about our own geospatial situatedness, it is directly connected to the system of caste. It's directly connected to affect. You can always explore the idea of touch. You can explore the idea of how emotions can be brought onto the epidermis. There are several representations. I have only looked at one single aspect of the epidermis, and that is to do with diseases. And again, within diseases, I only looked at smallpox. There are other ways of broaching this area. So I hope it is a good opening. It's a good beginning for students, particularly the students who at SH College who are listening to me. Something that you can take up for your close analysis and reading in future.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Seems like we have some questions here.
Okay.
Marin Chiramil has asked. Marin Chiramil has asked how epidermis can be related to literature.
Okay, thank you, Marin Chiramil. That is precisely what I was trying to do through this talk, how the epidermis can be related to literature. Now, probably maybe we can extend this argument about or this particular space of epidermis into another context, another theoretical space probably, in terms of how one's identity is generated. So the argument here is that an identity is created depending on where that entity is positioned. All right. So think about the COVID, the virus, the coronavirus that we are speaking a lot about. It has a perfect cohesive structure of its own, right? It has a beautiful way in which it is visualized and picturized in our media. and it is a cohesive identity that the coronavirus, or that particular virus has its own. But its identity changes when it is in association with another body, and for our understanding, when it is in association with the host body, when it affects the human body, it becomes problematic, right? It's even fatal in some cases. So here we are talking about how an identity changes when it is in association with a particular place, a particular space, or how space and place matters when it comes to the creation of identity. So in with regard to the epidermal metaphors, I was looking at, it was a close reading on smallpox patients and how the different spaces that are associated with smallpox results in the creation of a cultural imaginary in terms of identity.
Okay, ma'am. We have some more questions. So another question is, how body has become alienated and the cultural aspect affects the modern literatures.
How the body is alienated
and the cultural aspect affects the modern literature.
Okay. So with regard to alienation, again, these are all, we can approach the idea of, again, alienation from multiple perspectives. But since we are speaking about alienation with regard to the idea of body, these are all ways in which we can analyze the position of body, and through that we are essentially questioning the idea of a human, right? There is an idea of human that is proposed to us through enlightenment. There is an idea of humanism that is in place through Renaissance ideology, but we've been critiquing it for a very long time, right? And we have come to a point where we are questioning the centrality of the human itself. We are questioning the idea of how the human is no more playing. The human is no more at the center of our narratives and our discourses, and therefore we are trying to incorporate other non-human forms into our discussion. And therefore, essentially, I think even in terms of the present day pandemic, we are definitely speaking about how the human is alienating themselves literally and and as a metaphor. We are distancing ourselves from situations. We are distancing ourselves from our ecosystem, and in a way, we can question the position of the human through that.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Another question. What are the new metaphors and theories based on epidermis?
If you are interested in reading more about skin, there is a writer you can take a look at. That would be Stephen Corner. Stephen Corner has written a book called The Book of Skin. And then again, the philosopher that I had mentioned, Michael Serres. Michael Serres has written a book called The Five Senses, where he's speaking about how the skin becomes a space where there is a mingling of all the senses. So we're not giving a primacy to one single sense, but all the senses are coming together on the skin. It's not only in terms of touch, but in terms of the other senses as well. So, see, the skin is just a canvas. Imagine it as a canvas, and there are multiple ways of approaching the skin. It could be in terms of power relations. It could be in terms of governing the body. You have ideas related to, how, there is an entire economy of death itself. So there's a play around necropolitics that happens. So the body, and even the dead body has a value to itself. It's not that, the corpse is the end of everything, but the corpse has a value of its own. So, it's not, epidermis is not the end of it. It is, I believe the way to look at it would be, it should not be seen as just a covering of the body, but it needs to be seen as ever expanding, transgressing canvas through which we can explore and we can situate the human itself, the human subject itself.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, gratitude makes sense of our past, brings peace for today, and creates a vision for tomorrow. I invite Ms. Sandra Julia Jose, Assistant Professor, Department of English and Webinar Coordinator, to thank you for your presence and participation.
Respected Principal of Sacred Heart College, Chalakudy, Reverend Dr. Sister Irene, Ms. Bindu Jose, Head Department of English, Dr. Shirley Jose K, IQAC Coordinator, dear resource persons of the webinar, the distinguished dignitaries and participants of the webinar, members of the organizing committee, the staff and students of Sacred Heart College, Chalakudy, and other well-wishers of the webinar. A warm good morning to all. And at last, the long-awaited and much sought after, and I should say the event or the incident that made my WhatsApp chats unusually active, is nearing to its winding up session. The national webinar on translating boundaries, nation, culture, and body is winding up. When the idea of a national webinar was slowly edging out, we wanted it to be preemptive in nature, predominantly because it should thereafter reach out other realms, domains, and areas having similar aptitudes. At this moment, or you can say at the outset, before we proceed further, it is our bounden duty to express our unflinching gratitude to our Almighty God, who is unceasingly showering His blessings upon all of us. His ever ancient and ever new protection and providence was our guiding motive and hope, despite all the challenges, I should say. Now, as and when our English department mooted the plan, to our striking surprise, it was unabatedly welcomed by our beloved principal. Her unparalleled enthusiasm, incomparable farsightedness, unflinching and outreaching support are worth mentioning. Her intermittent positive reminders, especially to look into the technical sides of the webinar, were a telling force in the progress of its conduct. Had she not been there as an invigorating force, this, our attempt, would not have been a success. So, all our gratitude and thanks goes primarily to our principal, and we openly acknowledge it here. Thank you, Reverend Dr. Sister Irene. Next comes our HOD, Ms. Bindu Jose. As head of the department, she leaves no stones unturned in matters that are official. The proud IQAC coordinator of the previous cycle of NAC visit, I should say she is perfectly duty-bound and an exemplary model in her zeal for academics. So the departmental staff, as all who know her would agree, she is supportive, gentle, tender, and loving, whereas she keeps up a motherly concern to all students at large. As she has mentioned in the welcome note of the inaugural session, being the youngest in the department, I have many a times experienced that warmth and understanding, mostly because she is that much a loving mother to her children. As her expertise and attention to every nook and corner, to every minutest detail, had been instrumental in the success of this project. We express our utmost gratitude to our dear head of the department, Ms. Bindu Jose. Thank you very much, ma'am. Before I move forward further, I should mention a very special thanks to all the resource persons of the webinar. I should say the dream and plan of the webinar got materialized with that node from those four of them. What would I like to comment on them is the very sincere and genuine effort that they all have put for their session. And that's a perfect model for all of us to follow. Dr. Sanju Thomas enlightened us with translations and gender. Ms. Chaitanya Ilsa Achangunya deliberated on youth subcultures. Then MLP Matthews conversed about the limits of imagination in the light of Indian English fiction. And Dr. Alvin Susan Jose wised us up with epidermal metaphors and literature. All the sessions were meticulously carved out once, and thank you. Very special thanks and love to you, Dr. Sanju, Ms. Chaitanya, Ms. Amal, and Dr. Elwin. The webinar, almost at the fag end of the academic calendar, is made in collaboration with the IQAC of Sacred Heart College, Chalakudy. So we are already busy into that schedule for the next NAC visit. Despite the very busy discussions and debates that are happening within the IQAC, Dr. Shirley Jose K, the IQAC coordinator, supported us throughout the conduct of the webinar. And also I would like to mention special thanks to the technical assistance given to us by the two assistant coordinators of IQAC, Dr. Nitin from the Department of Mathematics and Mr. Libin Francis from the Department of History. Thank you very much. Now, I should say, there is another person whom I cannot avoid is Ms. Smita Davis, Head Department of Mathematics. She is referred to as in a very colloquial way, in a very in our mother tongue, a chunk miss by the student team of the webinar. So thank you very much, ma'am. She was there behind the certificate generation and all. Thank you very much. I also extend my thanks to Dr. Chako, Head Department of Economics, and Mr. Nigel Jacobi from the Department of Economics for their moral support. Now I move on to the members of the organizing committee. Though I stayed up that particular ship called the national webinar, without them it would have been almost impossible. I take this opportunity to thank Dr. Sister A. Princey Ando, Miss Dali Matthew, Miss Noble A. Paliat, Miss Femin Sunny, Sister Alfonsa, Miss Anju Rose Ando, Miss Danisha KS, and Miss Kirtana PK. They stood with me thick and thin, and it is with the help of them that the webinar is almost like it has got materialized. Thank you very much. I would also like to mention a special thanks to the technical assistance given to me by the technical assistant of the college, Mr. Anshuman, for the smooth conduct of the webinar. And I can never forget the team 4 of my students. And the first in that is that familiar face on all these 4 days. Evelyn Jose, she was the master of the ceremony on all these 4 days. So thank you, Evelyn. Then I have two of my students, Afrina KR and Sister Annette Mary George. She was there, both of them, they were there behind the laptop, behind the Google Meet, all through the conduct of the webinar. Thank you very much, Annette and Sister Annette and Afrina. Also with the brochure and you can say with the design of the brochure and also the certificate, I was helped out by Ankita Suresh, a first BA English Literature student, and her moral support, Unnimaya, also belonged to first BA English Literature English Literature class. Both of them, I thank you very much. All of them, I thank you all. Then a special note of thanks to Marin of first PG literature, then Ansa and Harida of second BA English literature. All of them were they behind the WhatsApp group and the chat replies. Thank you. I also extend my gratitude to all my first, second, third year BA literature students and first and second year PG students for being with us throughout the journey. The staff of Sacred Heart College Chalakudy worth a mention for their incessant support and love and motivation throughout. I should say that, that just one line inquiry or just a positive comment that they made were like, were a motivation for me, for us all. And thank you very much for that. And I also thank all the participants, faculties from various institutions, research scholars, and of course, literature enthusiasts. Thank you very much. It was indeed a motivation for all of us. And as a last note, I extend a special note of thanks to all those who have registered for the program because the registration was almost close to 400. That was, I should say that, that I should confess that it was a motivation. It was a boost for all of us that there were so many people who are waiting for the webinar. That was a kind of a boost for us. And a special thanks to registrations from Philippines, from Algeria, from Casablanca. That has in fact, took us a long way, to give our best to the conduct of the webinar. So thank you once again to all who were there with us during the journey, our well-wishers, our families and friends. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. That marks the end of the 4-day national webinar on translating boundaries, nation, culture and body, organized by the Department of English and the IQAC of Sacred Heart College, Chalakudy. Hope you all have had a great time and have gained everything that you were seeking. Thank you and have a splendid day.